We're back with another episode of App Stories, today sponsored by Clean My Mac X. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I've been hiding something from you, Federico, for quite a while.
I am loving this because usually I do this kind of stuff, but now you did it. So yes, I am ready. You've been teasing this for months?
I have. It's been a while since I've been doing this. Let me say that this started I'll give some backstory first before I really spring it on you, which is, you know how it is in the summer when you're doing a review. I was sitting in my office at my desk day after day writing about macOS Sonoma. And because I can't put that on all my Macs, I really had to write about it. I had to be kind of stuck at my desk. I was chained to my desk, and more so as the summer progresses, which I don't like. I like to get up and get around. I like to go work in other parts of the house. I like to leave the house. I like to do various things. And so I was spending more time sitting at a desk than probably I normally do. And my mind started to wander. And it started to wander to, what are some setups I could create for myself where I could get away from the desk and get some things done, particularly things related to reading and research, without having to sit in front of my Mac or without having to even deal with my iPad, when I really just, all I want to do is read, maybe take some notes, and not have to have things like email coming in and other distractions. And so I started to look around and think about what that kind of setup might look at like in late August. And I purchased something. And this has both a hardware and an app angle. And this being App Stories, we're going to talk about the apps in particular. But I'm going to send you right now. Let me find this.
Oh my God, this is a proper surprise.
It is a proper surprise. This is something that I don't think you will. I think you'll get it once you get it. Here it comes.
Okay.
I just sent it to you in iMessage.
I am on iMessage. Oh, you got one of those e-ink tablets.
I did.
Oh my God. Oh, is it the book? What is it? The Boox?
It is the Boox Tab Ultra.
Oh my! This is an actual tablet, and you have, oh my God, you have all sorts of apps on this thing. I see Matter, I see Obsidian, I see Feedbin, I see our own Mac Stories Images web app.
Yep.
Apple Music. Oh my God. Okay.
So Federico, this is my first foray into Android too, which is also kind of interesting.
Oh my. Okay. The stage is yours, John. Okay.
So I guess first I want to talk about the hardware a little bit, and then we can talk about the apps and kind of the experience of slogging through an outdated version of Android in an e-ink environment, which is not ideal, but it's not impossible either. But in terms of the hardware, to give people an idea, this is roughly the size of a standard iPad. So I think I'll put in the show notes the exact dimensions, but it's roughly 10 inches diagonally, and it's really solidly built. It's dense. I bought the keyboard cover for it, which works a lot like the one you get for the iPad, except that instead of hovering over the keyboard, the edge of the tablet fits into a little groove and has like little metal pins that are magnetically attached and feed power to the keyboard. But it works perfectly fine. It's a little smaller than a full-size keyboard, but it's not so much smaller that it makes much of a difference. It's pretty easy to type on. The keyboard itself, like in terms of like picky keyboard comments, the letters as they are printed on these keys are slightly raised, which bothers me. And I've read people saying the same thing online, where you can feel the printing of the letters, which almost feels like you think like, oh, did I like get something on my keyboard? Is there something stuck on there? It's not terrible, and you do get used to it, but it's not ideal. But otherwise, it's a relatively fine keyboard. And the screen is really good. It's a good quality e-ink screen. And one of the things that is interesting about this is that it has a variable refresh rate, which I'll get to in a little bit about why that makes sense and why that allows me to do things that you couldn't do with the typical e-ink tablet. But the quality of the screen is good. It's got a stylus. It's got a very Apple Pencil-like stylus that sits on the top, magnetically attaches, and you can take handwritten notes that way if you want. Not something I've done a lot of. Boox has built in a bunch of its own apps. It's got its own browser, its own RSS reader, its own note-taking app that does OCR of your handwriting, which is actually pretty well done. There's also widgets, which you saw in the photo I sent you. There's one that I have for my recent notes that I've edited, and another one for Apple Music that I put in there. You can see I've got got Olivia Rodrigo guts there in the corner, and you can connect Bluetooth headphones to this and listen to music if you want. So it's a full-on tablet with with good hardware. And what prompted me to buy this was really the minimal theme on Obsidian coming out with a beta e-ink version, which is very much a beta because there are definitely places where it doesn't work. Like you go into some of the settings of Obsidian and there's no words on the buttons, the contrast, the color schemes need to be enhanced more for e-ink, but it works extremely well for that. And my thought process was, I've always been a little jealous of the people who are into Kindles and Kobos and all those things, because I do like the experience of reading on e-ink. I think it's just a really good reading experience. The problem is that I just don't read a lot of books. I mean, it makes me sound like someone who doesn't read. I do read a lot, but it's always articles. And my day-to-day reading is all centered around the web. It has very little to do with ebooks. I enjoy a good ebook now and then, but day to day, my reading consists of the web and RSS and taking notes on those things. And when I looked at the Tab Ultra, the thing that struck me was this might finally be the e-ink device where my kind of reading can actually work. And I'm here to tell you, Federico, it is.
Okay.
With a bunch of caveats, because it is e-ink and it is Android, an old version of Android. And so you have to be willing to deal with some frustrations now and then, but it works really, really well. Do you have any questions about the hardware before we kind of get into how the apps work?
Okay, so is this the Tab Ultra or the Tab Ultra C?
It's the Tab Ultra, and I looked at the C. The C one is color. And color e-ink color e-ink is very new, and it tends to have kind of this pastel washed out look to it.
Yeah. I saw some videos.
Yeah, and it's color would be fine, but I will show you some screenshots here in a minute. This does on grayscale with photos and other images and articles. It does a fine enough job, and I really bought this to read and to write, not to look at photos. So the color didn't really appeal to me, so I went with black and white.
Okay, sounds good.
What's really interesting, though, is if you take a screenshot, like if I take a screenshot of this home screen and send it to you, the reason I sent you a photo is because the screenshot would be in color. You'd see the Apple Music widget in color. You'd see the Obsidian icon in color, because it's taking a screenshot of what the software is providing to the display, not what's showing on the display.
So Android is actually rendering them at full color.
They are.
Interesting. I had no idea that's how it worked.
Right. So unless an app has been specifically made for e-ink, where all they bothered with was black and white, you're going to see color in screenshots, which looks weird because, like, when I took a screenshot of this home screen, some of these apps are built-in Boox apps, and those apps are black and white because they didn't have any reason to do them in color. Whereas the ones that are like Kindle or Matter or Obsidian, they'll render in full color.
I see. So tell me, I guess what I want to know, I mean, the apps, sure, but also why, when you say my kind of reading, like Why was this device necessary, and how is it different from using an iPad? I guess I'd like to understand.
Well, yes. So this is very much a niche product in the sense that there's nothing that I'm doing that you couldn't do equally well, or probably in a lot of respects better on an iPad. I will give you that. What this does, it allows me to have kind of like a focus device where all I'm doing is reading. I can grab it, and it has incredible battery life, which I should mention too, because it's e-ink, right? I mean, like, it's very hard to say what the battery life is because it depends on how much I'm using it. And this is not a device that I'm using every single day, but it is something that I'm using when I feel like I just want to sit on the couch and relax and maybe catch up on RSS or do a little bit of light research, sitting outside or something like that. So yeah, it's not like you can't handle RSS, Obsidian, and browsing the web on an iPad. You certainly can do those things. What's nice about this is that I very specifically have kept things like email and other things off of this. Now, could I do that with my iPad mini and just make my iPad mini a reading device? Yes, but the flexibility of iPad OS, you're really at that point hamstringing the flexibility of it. And I feel like when I'm on an iPad, I want to have everything available to me because it can do so much more than one of these tablets can. But these tablets are very good for reading. And I just like it's easy on the eyes, the battery lasts forever, and I can kind of take it and go and read like it's a Kindle without the keyboard. Or I can bring along the keyboard and do a little writing too. So yeah, you could do something very similar to this on an iPad, but I wanted to see what it would be like on e-ink. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Clean My Mac X. Junk files, hung processes, and malicious apps can slow down even the latest, most powerful Macs. Maintaining your Apple machine, whether it's old or new, is essential for smooth macOS performance. Clean My Mac X is the all-in-one Mac maintenance tool that takes care of old junk, faulty apps, and malware. In an efficient, aesthetically pleasing, and hassle-free way, using the app's menu, you can monitor your Mac's health, CPU load, and a whole lot more too. With nearly 30 million downloads and 15 years of experience, this app is a must-try for every Mac user. It's also a great way to get ready for macOS Sonoma if you haven't installed it yet. As Apple continues to pack Macs with innovative features, Clean My Mac X ensures that your hardware remains healthy and running at peak performance, so you can enjoy a seamless macOS experience. I've been using this app absolutely forever, and it does so much more than just get rid of junk files. That's really why I started using it. But I also do other things like free up RAM using its tool to do that, and uninstall apps, and use the menu bar app to keep track of how my Mac is performing. It's perfect for all those things and a whole lot more. All App Stories listeners can get 5% off Clean My Mac X now. Check out the link in the show notes or go to macpaw.app/appstories. That's macpaw.app/appstories to get 5% off Clean My Mac X, or click the link in the show notes. Our thanks to Clean My Mac X for their support of the show. One of the things that is worth mentioning here and what makes this possible is that variable refresh screen, because this has a much more powerful CPU and a special GPU in it compared to a lot of the other Boox tablets and a lot of the other tablets that are made by e-ink makers. And what it allows you to do, and this is a very Android thing, you can set the refresh rate on a per app basis. So what that means is, for instance, you know how when you use an e-ink tablet and you turn the page of a book, for instance, you'll see a little little ghosting, right?
Yeah.
With this, what you can do is it has like 4 different quality refreshes where, say you're in a book and you want the page always to look as nice as possible. When you turn the page, it'll do what it calls a full refresh, a full sync of the page, where it'll eliminate all that ghosting. But that takes longer, and it doesn't work very well if you're trying to scroll a web page, for instance. So when you're doing something like browsing the web, You don't want that. What you want, you sacrifice a little of the quality of the image with a little bit of ghosting in exchange for smoother scrolling, so you can scroll a page. It also has built-in things like buttons that you can place on the edge of the screen, virtual buttons, to page through documents. So if I'm in RSS, I can just tap a button and it will go one screen at a time. And that has worked out really well for me. I've been dialing these things in where it's like, all right, for Obsidian, for instance, I want super fast refresh, and it may cause some ghosting, but then I don't have any lag when I'm typing, that's the thing about writing on one of these.
Okay.
See, there's an ultra fast mode. So if I do it ultra fast, it's pretty close to real time response between the keys and what shows up on the screen, no matter how fast I type. So that Obsidian gets that. But if I'm reading in, say, Matter, I have it on a lot higher quality refresh rate so that I get a nice, clean, crisp page every time I turn, page down to another full screen of stuff. You can even watch videos on this, like YouTube videos, which is wild to me.
So, okay. So, first of all, Matter doesn't have an Android app, right?
So they do not, and I've heard that they are. I've saw somewhere, I think it might have been on Twitter, that they said that they're working on one, but it's not out yet.
Okay, so you're using the web app, right?
I am.
Okay, so tell me, like, typically during your day, when and how do you use this device? Like, what's the workflow actually like for you?
Yeah, so I've had this now for about 5 or 6 weeks, and there was a big gap in the middle where I was finishing up the macOS review, where I just kind of put it aside. But typically what I'm doing now that things have calmed down is in the afternoon, in the late afternoon, when I'm kind of done with whatever big project I'm working on for the day. But maybe because I was working on a big project, I'm behind on checking the headlines in RSS, or I want to read some stuff that I saved to Matter the day before, whatever it is. I'll grab this and I'll go sit out on the balcony and I'll just start reading. And then I'll keep it in the keyboard cover. I'll pull it out of the keyboard cover to do the reading. And then if I find something that I really want to start taking notes on or whatever, then I will put it in the keyboard and start typing. Now, for me, in a lot of ways, this is very much like a reading processing tool too, because I go through those feeds, right?
Interesting. So it's like a physical inbox.
It is. It is. The device is the inbox. That's a good way of putting it, because what I've got on here, you kind of understand my workflow. My workflow for reading is everything comes through RSS for the most part.
Right. You need to gather all sorts of links.
Right. So links are coming in, and then at some point I sit down and I look at the links. And the links may go to Matter because I want to read them and I don't have time to right now. They might go to Raindrop because they're a reference thing or something I'm going to deal with down the road. Like maybe it's going in the club newsletter, or maybe I'm going to write a link post about it, or maybe I just want to save it for some other reason.
Or maybe it's one of those Reddit threads about AR glasses.
Right.
It's one of those things like, let me save how this person customized their glasses for later. It's not an article. It's not a bookmark. It's just a page that you may need later.
Right. Or I come across some video game accessory that looks interesting to me, but it's not something I'm going to buy today. I want to spend a little more time thinking about it and maybe researching it. It's that kind of stuff.
Because you don't want to leave tabs open in your browser. That's also another thing.
Yes. And I'm definitely guilty of keeping lots of tabs open, but it does help to have something like a Raindrop to avoid that. So, my workflow is a weird combination of RSS, Raindrop, a web browser, a note-taking app like Obsidian, and then just sometimes like apps that offer broader news if I just am doing more personal reading, like, just want to see what's going on. And Artifact is one of those, and they have They have an Android app, so I dip into Artifact once in a while too.
Is it good? Like I was actually on the beta of Artifact before it came out.
It's gotten better.
It's gotten better. I see that it's getting a lot of updates.
It is, and it's got kind of a weird link posting service to it. It's becoming more of a social network, and it's one of those things that I want to spend more time on because I have the sense that it improves the more you use it, just because it becomes more tuned to your tastes. And I feel it's a little bit like criticizing Artifact right now is a little bit like people criticizing Threads, showing them nothing but celebrities because they got on Threads and didn't actually follow anybody. You know what I mean? You need to kind of tune it a little bit to really get into it. So I should talk about these apps a little bit. I guess I should tell you too, you can do a split view here too. You can actually split apps on the screen. And I should send you some of these pictures, Federico, because
you really should.
You can split the screen and have like Obsidian on one side and a browser on the other side, for instance.
I am fascinated by this. While you send me these pictures, I just wanted to say that I am fascinated by the idea that you've been writing about your reading and sort of link managing workflows for years, and effectively you've ended up sort of having your own link gathering machine.
That's exactly what this is.
This is just a computer and I'm guessing it could be any computer, right? That's the thing. It could be any computer. But the advantage of e-ink is that you get much better, obviously, text quality on screen, and you can use it outside. So that's the advantage, I guess. You could do this with an iPad. You could do this with any other Android tablet. You could do this with your MacBook, but you will lose the advantage of e-ink. And so I think it's a very, like you said at the beginning, this feels like a very niche use case, but I think I am not surprised. I mean, obviously, I am surprised by everything, but it makes sense in hindsight that you ended up with actually having a dedicated physical computer for all your links and for all your different workflows.
Right. That's very much what it's become. And it's perfect for outside because you don't have the glare. You can read it really easily. I mean, I wish I had this a little earlier in the summer, but I think
take a look at these pictures.
Okay.
Wow, I'm looking at a split view of Obsidian on one side and what looks like a RSS on the other.
Yep.
There's a full screen. I see Obsidian. The font's a little weird, I guess.
That's Courier New.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking at a web. Which web browser are you using?
Okay, so
I remember there's like a favorite third-party browser.
Yes, that's what I'm using. I'm using Kiwi.
Kiwi, interesting.
The Kiwi browser. The reason I'm using Kiwi is because Kiwi, unlike Chrome, supports extensions, and so
what extensions?
Yeah, it supports browser extensions. So this is part of the whole. I'm going to write about this because this is a deep workflow. This whole machine because I've got the Matter extension in here. I've got the Raindrop extension in here. I've got all kinds of stuff that I can do.
See, that's powerful to have those extensions in an e-ink device. It means you can save to your queue, you can bookmark, you can highlight, I guess.
Yeah. So the other thing I've been experimenting with is how there's a Bookmarklet called the Obsidian Web Clipper.
Oh, so that's what, yes.
Mm-hmm. So I asked you a couple questions about this. Yep. What I did is I took the JavaScript out of that Bookmarklet that's made that you can use. And there is a special customizable toolbar object in Kiwi that you can drop any JavaScript into. I dropped the Obsidian Web Clipper into it. And so I have a button in the toolbar of the Kiwi browser that will take any article and dump it into Obsidian. And then I have a book reader called Moon Plus Reader, which
I'm familiar with that one. Okay.
Yeah, it's a third-party ebook reader that can also read Markdown. and you can point it at a particular folder of Markdown. So I've got it. One of the folders that it is pointed at is the Obsidian clippings, so that I can read my clipped Obsidian articles in an ebook reader, and it looks fantastic because it's a really well done ebook reader.
You've built your own read later tool.
I have.
Based on Obsidian Markdown and e-ink. That's like, this is the ultimate John experiment.
This is, and it's all built on open web standards, Federico. All of this stuff, right? I mean, I've got RSS going. I've got Android. I've got all kinds of stuff going on here. I've got EPUBs. I've got everything going on. Now, I can also, because that ebook reader handles Markdown, I can also use it as a way to review things that other writers on Mac Stories have created. Because I can just point it at and basically bookmark any folder in Obsidian or anywhere else on this system and read that way, which is a great way to read. But it's only reading. You can't edit in the ebook reader, as you can imagine. So
right. Okay. Key question.
Okay.
What happens if you're using this device and you're collecting your links, you're saving some to Obsidian? I assume you're using Obsidian Sync. So all these changes, you're not using iCloud. So Obsidian Sync is cross-platform.
Yep.
All those changes appear on your other devices. You're using Raindrop, Feedbin. Okay. All of this is okay. But what happens if you think of a task you need to save?
Then I have no solution. Well, actually, it's not that I have no solution. I can go.
I guess you have your phone with you.
I have my phone, and I can go to the iCloud website. That would be what I would do on this device, which I actually did bookmark, and I had it on the home screen. I took it off, I think. Yeah, I did take it off because I didn't find myself really using it, because I do have my phone with me. It's not like I'm, going off in the wilderness and using nothing but Android. I do have other tools at my disposal, but this is really just for doing reading. To kind of round out what we're talking about with apps, I'm using Feedbin, and I'm using Feedbin. One of the things that I find frustrating is that a lot of apps that are not made with e-ink in mind, when the fonts show up, everything looks bold. So some services I used, everything would look terrible when I would try to read it. It'd be like trying to read an article where everything was bolded, and it just isn't a good experience. That happens on some web pages too. But Feedbin does a very nice job. You can see there's an article about let's see if I had one of those that you can see. Yeah, you can, the one with the Rick and Morty, the general tech screenshot. Yeah. There's an article from The Verge about Rick and Morty, and another one about the EPA from Engadget. Yeah. That is what the Feedbin reader looks like. And one of the things I've done here is, because there's no way to send things directly to Obsidian or Matter from inside Feedbin, I have been using my technique of starring things in Feedbin that then go into the Matter inbox, because the starred feed in Feedbin is its own RSS feed that you can then subscribe to in Matter. You can see where I've been going with this for the last few months. I've been putting together all these little glue between these apps and finding ones that work so that I can put this together as an end-to-end solution for reading.
This is incredible. You obviously have my mind racing right now. And
Matter looks really good in this too. If you see, I have an article in there from about Sam Bankman-Fried by Liz Lopatto at The Verge that I took a shot of last night.
Oh, that guy's going to jail, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And her reporting's been great because it's super snarky too. And I just enjoy it. She's a great writer. I like reading her. But if you look at that article, that's in Matter, I believe.
How lightweight is it to hold? Because this is a 10.3 inch.
Yeah, it's pretty close to a regular iPad. That's a downside. This thing is pretty. It's solidly built with metal, so it's not super lightweight.
Is this the only Boox model that has the variable refresh rate
The
feature?
color one has it too. I don't think the other ones.
None of the other, because the Boox. So it's Boox is one of these companies. Like on the Pro Show for App Stories Plus, we talked about this new generation of companies that are making glasses. There's also this new generation of companies that are making e-ink tablets. It's a whole scene.
Yep.
And Boox is arguably the one of the more popular ones. The other is called there's the Remarkable. It's another popular e-ink tablet platform,
which I've looked at closely too.
I know. I remember you asking questions. Boox, they have a ton of models, including just came out like this week. They just came out with the Palma. The Boox Palma is an e-ink phone. It's like an e-ink sort of like smartphone form factor device for like one-handed reading.
Yeah, it's a little taller than a phone, I think. I know Jason Snell.
Yeah.
Jason Snell just wrote about it, and it's a little taller, but it is very much like a plus size phone, but maybe a little taller.
They call it mobile e-paper, which it's actually a really cool name. But yeah, so I guess if you go to the Boox website, they have two sort of macro categories for tablets. They have the e-ink tablets, and then they have what they call the e-paper tablet PCs. And from here, you can choose the Tab X, Tab Ultra, which is the one that John got, the Tab Ultra C, and the Tab Mini C. There's a lot of options here. This is very interesting.
And so if you look at this too, Federico, I mean, you saw that I have the Mac Stories Images website there.
Yeah, why?
Why? Because if I'm in Obsidian, if I decide to just do a little bit of writing in this, I'm not going to be uploading images from this tablet, but I can access everything that I've already saved. So if I'm doing an article on an iPhone app, I can take some screenshots, upload them to the CDN, and then access them from here.
I am impressed that you've been keeping this from me. I am impressed by the workflow of it all. This surprise ties in a lot of things that you've been telling me and writing about, like your use of Matter, your use of Feedbin and starring articles.
Oh yeah, that's all been part of it.
Yeah, the reason why you've been asking questions about Bookmarklet. The reason was this web browser with JavaScript extensions. This explains it. I feel like this is like the culmination of conspiracy theory. What has been John up to lately? And the answer was, well, there's an Android ink tablet behind the scenes, sort of being the master plan of it all.
Yeah, and that's really the key that holds it all together are web services. So most of these apps you'll see, I mean, they have some web service component to them so that if I can't find the app that I want, I can use the web service. And that's, and it's all held together with that, along with bookmarklets and extensions and all that kind of stuff. So it's very much a web-based approach.
And I think it makes a lot of sense to tie reading, and especially, we run a website. We write on the web, and it makes a lot of sense to have a device where, it's very much based on open standards. Like you said, it's all markdown and web services. Reading on the web should be like that. You have all these services that are cross-platform, and I think it makes a lot of sense for this kind of device, obviously because of the display technology that it's using, but also because other things that require more native sort of features on Apple platforms. Like I wouldn't want to have my to-dos on an e-ink Android tablet, because then I would lose all the native features of like reminders, for example, the geofence, the notifications, the attachments, or like I wouldn't want to have, photos, obviously. Like I want to use iCloud and iCloud Photo Library. I don't want to switch to Google Photos. But for this kind of very limited and very specific sort of workflow, you can go deep on all these services, which is exactly what you did. And it's exactly why, once you consider how Obsidian is tying it all together, that's my reaction. I'm very intrigued.
This is one of those things, Federico, where I have had my eye on things like the Remarkable and other e-ink tablets for years. And the thing that has always stopped me was the lack of having a way to easily both do the kind of reading that I do that is very web-based, that requires a screen that can handle scrolling, for instance, as well as being able to access notes. And this actually puts those things together in a way that I don't think has ever really been possible, because a lot of things, sure, a lot of other e-ink tablets do have note-taking apps, but they tend to be divorced from the rest of the apps. It's e-ink tablets tend to be very focused on reading books and nothing else. So you can take highlights, you can take notes in a Kindle, for instance, and there are ways to extract that into Readwise or into Obsidian or whatever you happen to use. But it's not the focus. It's always secondary, and it's always a question of exporting and offloading. This actually integrates all those things at once. Now, I should mention that this has been a painful process at times because, first of all, this is not the most powerful device. It is the most powerful e-ink device, or one of the most, but it still pales in comparison to something like an iPad. So at times there are waits, but for what I'm doing, it's not usually, compute power is not usually a big deal, but once in a while there'll be something that pauses and you wonder what's happening, like installing apps. 2, it's running Android 11, which is 2 generations ago. And so that's, you're not going to be getting cutting edge Android features with this by any stretch of the imagination. 3, because it's e-ink, a lot of Android, and the Android ecosystem of apps is not great to begin with. And I learned that very clearly with this experiment, that a lot of things where I would hope to have had a dozen choices in apps, I had 1 or 2. And really the ones that I ended up going with oftentimes were the ones that handled e-ink the best, because a lot of apps don't handle e-ink well. And that you have to get used to recognizing when an app isn't built for e-ink, and maybe there's an invisible button somewhere on the page that you have to try to find, or there's an outline of a button with no words on it, and things like that, because that does happen from time to time with this. Now, Kiwi, I think, is one of the most important pieces of this, because Kiwi is a very good third-party browser, and it does allow you to do a lot of browser things that you can't do in mobile Chrome. And so once I found that was a lifesaver, because I could use Bookmarklets easier. I could use extensions, which just you can't do at all on mobile Chrome, on the Android version. And so that really got me to the point where I was really tying this stuff together a lot more tightly than I originally did.
All right. Well done.
Thank you. All right, Federico, that's a good place to wrap this up for today. I will be writing about this at some point. I haven't gotten to that point yet. It's one of those things that, because I don't use it every single day, and when I do use it, it's usually for relatively short periods, maybe like an hour or 2 at the most. I feel like I need to live with it even longer than usual before writing about it. But I will write about it at some point. I want to thank our sponsor for this episode. That's Clean My Mac X. You can find me and Federico at macstories.net. We are also on Mastodon. Just go to vitici.macstories.net or johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us there. And we're on Instagram, where Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.